All right, Jules, I want to explain. I think most of our listeners know, but just for the avoidance of doubt, to make this very, very clear, when we say, oh, they're the richest club in the world, they have this much money and blah, 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 that's not really how clubs work. So clubs operate as businesses.
Yeah.
Some clubs, if they make losses, they have owners who go and make up those losses by putting in money, or they'll invest in the club. They'll either be an interest-free loan, or they'll raise the equity so that the club have physical cash.
Yeah, but that's their own money.
That'll be the owners.
Yeah.
That'll be the owner's money, and it can be an ownership group. It can be a corporation.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily need to be like an individual, right? FSG is obviously they have different interests in the Boston Red Sox and whatnot. They have investors who seek a return. Now, the majority of FSG shares are held, I think I'm right in saying, by John W. Henry and Warner.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's a listed company in the stock exchange where they have thousands of investors and they have to pay a dividend, otherwise the stock price goes down or whatever, right? So they can take a hit for a while longer. They can make decisions that other companies might not make, but ultimately, they need cash to run. And I think, and the issue of having cash on hand as opposed to just a positive balance sheet, I think those are two different things. Those are really, really important.
Yeah.
So one way that people have looked at this is the game is just getting too expensive. We cannot compete with Manchester United and Real Madrid have a structural advantage. It's not that I don't want to get into like they're a bigger club or whatever, but, but objectively they are bigger brand. And Bayern Munich, those are bigger brands who have exploited their brand, who have grown their brand for a long time, as opposed to, I think it also matters where these people are. And I'm saying this in the nicest possible way, but Liverpool is not a wealthy city relative to Munich. Say it's not as big as these other cities like Munich or like Madrid. I mean, Munich is. It's the richest city in the richest part of the richest economy or the biggest economy in Europe, right? Germany. Yeah. So there's all these structural advantages. So it's like it's tough to compete with those guys. It's tough to compete with Paris Saint-Germain and City, who have this availability of cash. Yeah. At some point, we don't want Liverpool's value to go down if we can't keep putting in money. Right.
Yeah, and the value would go down if the team is not doing as well as they have been doing for the last 7-8 years, really. And the problem there is you fall behind in terms of how much money you can invest in your team to buy players. Then you will start dropping. And
I think Arsenal is perhaps an example of that. People used to make fun of Wenger when he talked about the top 4 trophy or whatever. But the reality, Arsenal had 4 years outside the Champions League. They're still not in the Champions League now. Yeah. So that means that those 4 years, if you're not playing Champions League, you're getting, depending what your revenue is, you're getting sort of 15-20% less each year.
Exactly.
And so that means that you either spend less, it means your owner has to put in money in terms of equity, or it means that you have to take on debt.
Yeah, or sell some of your best players that you would not want to sell.
Or you have to sell some of your best players, So you don't want to get into that situation.
No, and I think FSG have done a lot of good things with that club. They've made mistakes, of course, and remember during the pandemic, some of the decisions maybe, but the training ground, the stadium, club, of course, but even that team that won the Champions League and won the league for the first time in 30 years, they did good things. I think right now it feels like whether they sell the whole club or just have new investors, it feels like they need a bit of fresh blood coming in as well. Maybe to refreshing after 12 years is a long time to own a football club, to try to keep it at the top, be consistently successful, and it's a long time. If you have new people coming in with maybe different ideas, money to invest in, because let's not forget as well that they built this incredibly successful team also on the back of the sell from Coutinho and the sell from Suarez.
Yeah.
If you don't sell those two players at that time, I'm not sure how you build this squad that then won you all those things. And now you don't have those assets anymore really in your team.
Yeah, and you can't go and sell players at crazy inflated prices to Barcelona the way you did in the past. Yeah, and I also want to point something else out that, broadly speaking, football clubs make money in 3 different ways. They make money through stadium income. So in other words, by selling out the stadium, having luxury boxes, whatever, they
Yeah.
make money through commercial income and sponsorships, and they make money from prize money from what they get from their performances in the league and in the Champions League. Now, so in terms of commercial income and sponsorship, Liverpool have generated a lot of money around the world, of course, but they're not where Real Madrid or Bayern are, Manchester United are. But equally, there's a worldwide recession right now, right?
Yeah.
Times are tough, so it's not. You're not going to run into that many companies who are like, "Oh yeah, sure, I'll cut you, a 20 million check so you can put my logo here," right? It's just it's a lot tougher to do, which is also why we're seeing a lot of slightly weirdo sponsors. We've talked about with Fulham, with Man City, who've gotten ripped off. So
TV right money, you might expect will stagnate.
So the prize money is linked to the TV rights money. Exactly. So the couple of things. So when the TV rights go up as a whole, that's obviously good for your club, but when they go up for a whole, you have to see how they go up for everybody in your league, right? And everybody in the Champions League. So that doesn't really move the needle. The question is, how much can you keep out-earning your rivals by finishing higher them in the league and so on, and going further in the Champions League? Now, they've done a great job of that. It's certainly not guaranteed.
No.
To do that, you need to have a good team on the pitch. It's really hard to keep that level. The other aspect, though, I think, is also stadium income. And here I go back to Liverpool's geography, right? This is not one of the wealthier parts of England. They have 30 miles away, or 35 miles away, they have Manchester United, who remain a behemoth of a brand with tons of fans. They have Manchester City, who've been phenomenally successful on their own doorstep. Okay, they have Everton, who
but building a new stadium.
Building a new stadium. It's tough timing. Everton have a big fan base. For all this idea that we have 700 million fans around the world. The fans who bring you the most money are the ones who show up to the game, because they buy the tickets, the merchandise, the concessions. There's only so much you can squeeze your local fan base, right? You can't build a 250,000 seat stadium, although Florentino Perez might try to do that one day. So, there's a whole business model piece to this that I think people need to understand. Jurgen Klopp, though, is very categorical about this. He came out and he said, "Whatever happens, I'm staying."
Yeah,
pretty much,
whatever happened, he said he's committed to the club, regardless of ownership. He said also that when he extended his deal not that long ago, it was on the belief that it was the partnership with FFG as well and the owners of the club. That's why I think he believes more right now that they're just looking for investors. I think he may even say the club is not for sale per se, as in the whole club. We'll have to see. I don't know exactly what he knows or what they've told him or not, because like you rightly said, I think the door is open to anything, really. But it's a good thing at least to have a manager who's this is not really bothering me. This is not a negative pressure or negative influence or negative noise, because we know where we are, we know what we're doing, and we're going to keep doing what we've been doing.
Now, one of the other things which I think is significant here in terms of how they went about doing it. I mean, you said before, and I tend to agree, right? If you produce an investment deck, you've got an actual physical something that you can't deny, right? The fact that they wanted it out, I think, is relevant, because if there's one thing that I've kind of learned covering this business and sometimes the business of football, is that there aren't that many billionaire private equity groups out there. And to some degree, they kind of all know each other.
Yeah.
So if they wanted to do this quietly, the way, for example, they did it quietly when they sold, I think it's 11% of Fenway Sports Group, they sold it to Redbird. As far as I know, they didn't engage an investment bank to find Redbird. They didn't, they knew the guys. Yeah. They called up, "Hey, Jerry, you want to talk? Can we do business? Whatever." And they did the deal. Now, I'm purely speculating here. People are like, "You shouldn't speculate." Well, no, this is kind of part of the thing, because there's only so much we know. I would get the impression that they have perhaps gone to the people that they know and the sources that they know. And it's a lot of people in the US.
It would make sense.
And they've gone to them quietly. They weren't able, at this moment in time, because we're not in a good place. The world is not in a good place financially. And so they said, all right, Goldman, Morgan Stanley, you guys go out there and find us other people. There's people in other parts of the world. But here's my...
Does that worry you?
I mean...
Does that mean that maybe Liverpool is not as attractive as they thought it might be? Or maybe because of the recession and the context economically, it's not maybe the right time to
It's tough to say.
Open?
Look, it could also be something else. It could also be, okay, John and Tom sit there and say, "All right, we're probably going to have to inject another 50 million in cash each this year. Oh wait, what if we could sell X% of the club to somebody else to do that for us? Oh yeah, good idea. Why don't we try it? Worst thing comes to worst, we'll just reach in our own pockets and put that in, right? So I think that's part of the piece as well, right? It doesn't mean the sky is falling. It doesn't mean that John W. Henry's living, under the T bridge in Boston. But it is relevant. We saw that with Redbird as well, who Redbird owned 11% of Fenway Sports Group. Obviously, they bought Milan for 1.2 billion. I think it's been reported, and I confirmed it, that they didn't actually give 1.2 billion. They gave
half of it.
It's more than half, but they gave, but a portion of it they borrowed. It's called a vendor loan, and it's not unusual. It's what happened with Newcastle as well with Amanda Staleyshire. They borrowed it effectively from the people who were selling them the club, and they'll kind of pay it back over time. It's kind of like when you buy a car, you've got car payments to make, right? So I said, and it's not because it's a bad investment. It's because this is the landscape right now for these people. So I wouldn't worry about it too much if I'm a Liverpool fan. Yep. I think the imperative for them is we want Liverpool to maintain their value. And we need to put money into it, because if Liverpool become what Arsenal were in that kind of fallow period where they're not making top four, they're not as relevant as they were, then the value of Liverpool as a whole drops, right? I wonder too, though, Jules, they've made a commitment. John W. Henry, after the Super League fiasco, he apologized, he made that video. He made a commitment. Super League is not an option for us.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned the mistakes that they made at some point. That was one of them. The furlough scheme was another one. They've rectified them as well as they could.
But I'm thinking specifically of the Super League, because if you say we're not joining the Super League, as long as I'm here, you're making a commitment perhaps even on behalf of the club. Yeah. Now, obviously, another owner could come in and be like,
of course,
I don't care what John Henry said.
I'm the boss now.
I'm the boss now.
To do that.
Here we go.
Course. It's just the relationship with Liverpool fans is obviously very strong. I think the club to the fans and the fans to the club. We saw the backlash that those decisions created back then.
Under the previous owners, before with Hicks and Gillette.
That was very toxic. So, I think you're accountable, is that we say? To your fans in what you've said before and now what you can do as well. So it'd be very interesting to see what happens in the Super League cases, of course, as you mentioned earlier, and then take it from there. But you can't not expect maybe a new owner coming and having different views on the Super League.
Yeah, and I don't think you can rule it out. I mean, we saw it with Tom Bowley as well, where he said, well, we don't need the Super League now. When he took over Chelsea, when he gave that interview. But I'm not putting anything off the table. It would be stupid to do that, right? From his perspective, fine. I would tend to agree with you. If I'm a Liverpool fan, you sit tight, you wait. You need to lose this idea that we need to be bought by some billionaire from the Gulf to chuck money in. I don't think that business model is sustainable. I don't think that business model is desirable. And by the way, before City and Paris Saint-Germain fans jump all over me, I'm talking a business model where you lose money every year, which is why both City and Paris Saint-Germain, they would say, and I think they are trying to move towards some level of break even or profitability. I think that's the reality of where we are. It's definitely, I think, a situation to keep an eye on.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.